Let's talk about the moral and the financial cost of mass deportations. I want you to think what happens when a society dehumanizes people to the extent that they can commit atrocities against mass groups of people. It's not pretty. And if they can dehumanize one group, then they can dehumanize another. And maybe it'll be your group. Maybe it'll be religious minorities or different ethnic groups or racial groups. We've got to stand up to this now. So let's talk about what Donald Trump said about deportation. He wants to deport every single undocumented person in this country. Think about how much it will cost, first of all. If you think that the reason why you're in favor of this is because of the economy, think about what that will cost our economy. Think about the cost of rounding people up, the bureaucratic cost, the cost of housing, the transportation costs, and then think about the cost to the economy as a whole. For example, all of the people who are undocumented pay into Social Security and Medicare. What will happen without all of their contributions? And they also pay sales tax. And they also do incredibly important work. Many are entrepreneurs and have their own businesses. And they're also consumers. And they rent homes or own homes. Donald Trump was asked about, what about mixed status families? That means people who are citizens and have family members who are not. What happens to the children who are maybe citizens when their undocumented parents are deported? He said they're going to go with. I want you to think about this. Donald Trump has spent a lot of time dehumanizing undocumented people and other people, saying that they're animals, saying that they're poisoning the blood of this country, that they're destroying the fabric of this country, calling people vermin, saying undocumented people are eating cats and dogs and other pets, when we know that it is not true and it has been disproven again and again. This dehumanization makes you think these people aren't worthy of respect and human rights. So what does it mean in a humanitarian sense when you deport someone? What happens to their possessions? What happens to their life? What happens to the apartments they live in? What happens to their children? What happens to the community? What happens to their friends? What happens if your child is playing at a friend's house and those parents happen to be undocumented and your child gets swept up in that and gets put in a detention center? Would you want your kid to be put in a detention center for 5 minutes, let alone 5 days or 5 weeks or 5 months? You know, U.S. citizens were swept up during Trump's last administration, and it took months for them to get out. Why? Because private detention centers were used, and they were making money, over $700 a day per person. They didn't want to give up that income. They're going to make it as tough as possible to get people out, people even who were wrongly detained. So what happens if your kid gets detained? Think of it if it were your kid that was detained, or your sister or your brother. How would you like them sitting in a detention center? And they call these detention centers the freezers because they kept it very, very cold. Why? Is it a health reason? No, it's part of the torture. And then think about the facilities needed to house millions and millions of people. How much is that going to cost? Studies show this is going to cost nearly $1 trillion to deport all of these people. But in the meanwhile, it's going to cause terror throughout our communities. Terror. You wouldn't want your kid in one of these facilities. What are you doing putting anyone? You think your kid is better or superior to some other person's kid? Kids are kids. People are people. When you think of 20 million people that Donald Trump wants to deport, and he says it's going to make it a bloody story, by the way. When you think of those people, and then you think, okay, well, now we've got to get them back to their country, right? Do you think that any country is going to take millions of people Do you think that the government's going to get it all right? Or are they going to just start sending people to whatever country will take people? And then what happens to all the people that the governments just won't take back? That's already happening. Venezuela has stopped taking back some of the people who we are trying to deport there. So then what happens to those people? I have faith that you're going to stand up to this kind of cruelty. Because if not you, who?